I'm Jason with the All Things Open team. We're here with Timothy. Please introduce yourself to the All Things Open community.
Sure. Hi, I'm Timothy Jordan. I'm a Director of Developer Relations, Open Source, and Developer Ecosystem at Google. My background's in computer engineering, theater, and teaching, and I believe in improving life through science and art.
I love it.
That's my intro.
Well, you had a great keynote here at All Things Open. I can't believe the Google Summer of Code is 20 years old. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What's exciting 20 years later?
20 years later. I mean, the Google Summer of Code is just this incredible program, and the sweep of history, 20 years doing any one thing in tech, is a pretty cool accomplishment all by itself. But I think what I love the most about it is the creation of community. So, and you were there at the keynote, what I said on stage, I really meant it. I think open source is more about the people than it is about the code that they write. And Google Summer of Code powers that in so many ways, creating contributors, creating mentors, contributing to the open source projects themselves as well. And I think that's what really keeps the team going is that community. And we see it whenever we run into anyone who was a contributor like 10 years ago and is now a maintainer, or just opened their own foundation, right? It's that connection between the community that's so important to the open source ecosystem.
I absolutely agree. It's been really fun to watch it grow over the years.
Yeah?
Yeah. I wish I had an opportunity to be a mentor one time, and the time capacity kind of situation. So maybe I'll look at it again.
Why not?
Yeah. How is AI going to impact developer relations?
That's a really interesting question. And we were talking. So I've been doing DevRel for about 15 years now, and I've seen it really evolve across that time. So I'm going to answer your question in two different ways. I think for developer relations, we care a lot about the developer experience, and that matters too. And then, of course, how it's going to affect our discipline. But I'll get to that second, which is probably where the question was. But I think that first part is really interesting too, particularly for developer relations, is that we improve the developer experience. We work with product and engineering teams to do so. We work directly with developer communities to do so. And when we improve that developer experience, developers are more successful. Turns out that developer experience is really transforming, right? With things like developer assistance, which is powered by generative AI oftentimes now, and I think is part of a context of this broader trend of bringing more of the developer experience in flow. And so if you were writing C code when you were learning how to program, you spent a lot of time in Unix man pages, right?
Yep.
And nowadays we have web pages that we go to where we look up our reference documentation. Then the next step that we're seeing more and more is getting that documentation where we're at when we need it right that moment, and we're seeing that in the developers. And why this matters for developer relations is that we're writing that documentation or that developer material, and we should be writing it knowing that it's going to show up through a model, through assistance, or in embedded documentation in that experience in a variety of ways. And we should also be thinking about encouraging that trend.
Right.
Not just writing the docs for the web pages like we've always done. Let's do that, and let's see how we can push that developer experience. So that's one way that I think we're going to see it evolve developer relations is really how we work on that developer experience. The other way is how it's going to affect our craft. And I think that this is true across business. Everybody's looking at AI and how it's going to change what they do. How does it make you more efficient and more impactful over time? And in fact, developer relations, so my background, one of the things I used to do is theater. And one of the cool things about theater is that it's art by any means necessary.
Okay.
Right? So rigging in theater comes from sailing. Lighting in theater comes from the automotive industry. Right, the original lights in a theater are par cans. That was a headlight on a car.
Right, we're learning
right?
stuff on the fly.
So we pull this all into theater to make the art, to make the story come alive. DevRel's the same way. Sure, we do documentation, we write sample code, but how do we do outreach? It evolves over time. We do hackathons, we do in-person courses, then that evolves, and we do self-paced courses. The in-person outreach evolves, and now we do conferences and we do online video. We do podcasts when that becomes more ubiquitously accessible. AI is no different in that. It's like, here's another tool that we can use, and we should. And so I think we're absolutely going to see the things that we expect, like assistance writing sample code, assistance with documentation or editing for style, and that's going to make developer relations, or DevRellers, if you will, more efficient. You still need the human in the loop to make sure that it aligns with strategy, or it's to your quality bar, it's saying what you want. But the second level, and getting into that art by any means necessary, is that first you're solving a problem that you kind of expected, and second, you realize new potential. And I think that's what's really exciting, right? And maybe this is generating lesson plans for a course, or maybe this is, I don't know, something we haven't thought about, but I think generative AI and AI in general in our discipline is going to do more than the things that we expect, and we should really embrace it.
Sounds great.
That was a very long-winded answer.
Well, it was a two-parter.
So I've been thinking a lot about this.
Do you have any tips, best practices, or tools that you're using that you could share with the All Things Open community?
I mean, so many, but like in what region?
People just like to know what tools you're using every day to get your job done.
Well, here, let me give you a general tip around generative AI in general. So when we think about using generative AI, say for assistance in the workflow, we're going to think a lot about complying to policy, or making sure that we're standing up the right policy, and so especially in open source. Right? When we think about contributing to an open source project, we need to make sure, because a lot of open source copyright is an issue, and so you have to really think deeply about the technology that you use in your workflow, and generative AI is no exception. So complying with that policy, or establishing a policy when you don't already have it, and then embrace the tools.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you're using generative AI in your application or in your source code, I found the most important thing is that eval is more important than traditional programming. So in traditional programming, we spend a little bit of time prototyping. We might do that in a variety of ways, but usually there's some sort of manual black box experiment that we're going to do. It's like, is this actually going to work if I bring these tools together? Okay, now we'll go code it for real with scale and all that in mind. With generative AI, however, you discover things in the scale process as well.
Okay.
So you actually have to evaluate, will this tool give me the output that I need for my application to be successful, more so than traditional programming? And will it do it at scale? And so eval is really, really important. And eval is a fancy word for experiment with the tool manually ahead of time. Do it in whatever you can simulate scale, right? However you can simulate scale to really understand that it's actually going to help. I think that's like my biggest tip now, because I see a lot of developers I talk to have this cool idea for using generative AI in their application, and then when they go to deploy it to 1,000 instances, it's doing something a little bit different than I expected. Well, yeah, because it's a different programming paradigm, so you really have to spend time in that area much longer. It's like when you're just learning to program and you think, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time programming this. I'm using hand signals for the people on the video instead of if they're doing just audio, so that's a lot. Okay,
yeah.
that was the big one. And then here's the little one, right, of like, I'm going to spend this amount of time debugging. And you later learn, actually you spend maybe 50-50 or even less, like programming, and then debugging is a huge amount of it. When you're using generative AI in your workflow, eval is a much larger part of it than you originally think, just like debugging is a much larger part of traditional programming than you originally think.
I saw that you worked in the Digital Media Academy with the University of California at Santa Cruz. What did you do there?
Hey, this is Todd with All Things Open. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate it. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button. We've got a lot of new content coming we think you're going to be interested in. One final favor, be sure to go to allthingsopen.org, allthingsopen.org to see everything that we do. Back to the video.
Those are actually two different places. So I was a lecturer at UC Santa Cruz. I taught intensive week-long and 2-week-long courses at the Digital Media Academy, training mid-career professionals or getting early career folks up to speed. I also was a lecturer at the Academy of Art University and like a few other universities. Early on in my career, before I worked at Google, I kind of had 3 different jobs. I worked in theater, I did a lot of teaching, and I was leading a small engineering team. And actually, one of the things I love about developer relations is you get to do all 3 of those things in one job, which is also a really important work-life balance thing, to have one job instead of the 3 jobs. But I love teaching, and I think it's teaching, storytelling, and making things it's the heart and soul of developer relations.
Yeah. What are you able to bring from acting and teaching into developer relations?
Okay, so that's a good question. I'll give you two answers on that one too. So really early on, I joined Google as an individual contributor, developer advocate. I worked on social web, I worked on Google Glass, gave the first demo of Google Glass. Really cool jobs. Back then, it was a lot about storytelling, right? How do I enable developers by teaching them as quickly as possible, because usually I'd have like 40 minutes, and it was like a complex concept or a new API or a new way of thinking in the case of Glass, like a new user interface design. And so how can I structure this narrative to really get across the things that they need, the tools they need to be successful with this medium? So that combination of storytelling and engineering really came together. Later on, as I was started managing and as I became a director at Google, I realized that. So when I did theater, I was a director.
Okay.
So I would, if you're not familiar with the theater discipline, I guess it's similar with film, except in theater, the director owns the whole design process and coaches all the actors, and keeps that design team together throughout the production process. Managing those individuals is very similar to managing DevRelers or technical creatives, folks who have a technical craft to do, but they also have to be creative about it, which is actually a lot of software engineers. As it turns out, doing that kind of management, lessons that I learned in theater, I can apply directly. Where theater is, get some people to go on stage and do something that's relatively strange, usually, like telling a story or acting out on stage is just an odd thing to do. And to be able to coach them through that process to bring their best art and their best craft to it is very similar to getting engineers to work together on these really large, complex systems.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I love it. This is perfect. Well, we're here with 5,000 friends in open source. What advice can you offer to help conference attendees apply what they've learned at ATO beyond the event after they go home?
That's a really good question. And I was thinking about conferences earlier in general. I've gone to a lot of them. More than the average software developer, because in developer relations, we tend to go to a lot of conferences to deliver the message as part of the job. And it's kind of special to be in an industry that prioritizes ongoing learning the way the technology industry does. And I think you really got to embrace that. There's this Stephen Hawking quote that I saw the other day. I was just reminded of it. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And I think when you go to conferences and you learn something new, you have the opportunity for that change.
Yeah.
My advice is to embrace it. Take something that you learned and implement it in your work. Find that new opportunity to work with another organization or another person and embrace that and see where that will take you. That opportunity that didn't exist a week ago, but now does exist because of All Things Open.
Perfect. Embrace it. Is there anything else I could add, Timothy?
No, man.
All right. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks.